So I don't really have to tell you guys this, but it's very clear that Bernie Sanders is loved among the Democratic Party base. However, there still is a small sliver of Democratic Party loyalists, namely Hillary Clinton sycophants. You'll see them on Twitter, who just hate Bernie Sanders, and their number one goal in life is to take him down. Now, the reason why Hillary Clinton's staffers, I'm assuming, are so butthurt about Bernie Sanders surging in 2020 is because they're mad. They were expecting Hillary Clinton to get elected. They were expecting to have a job in the White House, and they didn't realize that amid all of their hubris, they were turning off the party's base. They were not energizing people to get out and vote for Hillary Clinton. So instead of having a job in the White House and being in this prestigious, powerful position, they're angry and they are ranting about this on Twitter, and they're delegitimized and they have really no street cred whatsoever when it comes to strategy and when it comes to politics. So what are they doing? They're taking shots at Bernie Sanders still in the media. And we covered a story last week about how they were criticizing Bernie Sanders because he dared to request a private jet in certain instances when he was campaigning for Hillary Clinton so he could be more efficient and get to places quicker. But now we're seeing another article where they are just downright throwing everything they've got at Bernie Sanders. So as Holly Otterbein of Politico writes, both on the record and on background on Twitter and on cable television, Clinton's former aides and allies are taking pains to lay out what they see as all of Sanders' flaws, imperfections, and vulnerabilities, much as he once did to their ex-boss during a primary that saw mud flying on both sides. I would say, and for all I know, the Sanders people might take this as a compliment, among a lot of the major donors in the party, there's concern that he could emerge, said David Brock, a longtime Clinton ally who founded a pro-Clinton super PAC in the 2016 campaign and later authored a public apology to Sanders for some of his bare-knuckled criticisms during the primary. There are some very dyed-in-the-wool Democrats that wouldn't at all be enthusiastic about supporting him in the general election. In recent weeks, former Clinton aides have blasted Sanders for everything from his policy record to his campaign kickoff speech to the composition of his small dollar donors. The attacks come as Sanders is in the midst of a successful rollout, raising $10 million less than a week into his 2020 candidacy and attracting a combined 25,000 plus people to his first two kickoff rallies. When Sanders pulled in $1 million in the first 3.5 hours of his campaign, Adam Parkhomenko, the former director of grassroots engagement for the 2016 Clinton campaign, tweeted, "Only half were named Vladimir." In a February op-ed for NBC, Zach Petkonis, the director of rapid response for Clinton's 2016 campaign, slammed Sanders' past positions on gun control, immigration, and same-sex marriage. And after Sanders' first rally this weekend, former Clinton campaign aide Zerlina Maxwell claimed on MSNBC that Sanders did not mention race or gender until 23 minutes into his speech. She later walked back her comments somewhat after critics, including former Sanders campaign staffer Waleed Shahid, noted that Sanders talked about racism and sexism much earlier in the event. Yeah, so I have a lot to say about this. First of all, when David Brock says that the fact that the Democratic Party's major donors see that his individual donations could carry him to the nomination and that they're afraid of that, yeah, I'm sure the Sanders team is going to take that as a compliment. I would take that as a compliment. So it just goes to show you how out of touch these elitist limousine liberals are. They think that normal Americans don't like what Bernie Sanders is saying. They think that the Democratic Party's base don't like Bernie Sanders because he dared to run against Queen Clinton in 2016. But in fact, we don't like Hillary Clinton, and we actually love that he decided to have the courage to challenge the Clinton machine when everyone else, like Elizabeth Warren, pretty much cleared the field for Hillary Clinton. And I also love that they are trying to blast him for his stance on same-sex marriage. As a member of the LGBT community, I find that criticism of Bernie Sanders just completely rich. Because you backed a candidate that was one of the last people that came around to supporting same-sex marriage. So you have no credibility here. And for the people like Zerlina Maxwell to completely blast Bernie Sanders and attack him for not being more clear and direct in his message about race. You backed Hillary Clinton. You were an aide to Hillary Clinton, one of the candidates with the worst record on this issue, who called black youth super predators. The only other person who may be worse than Hillary Clinton on this issue is Joe Biden. So if you worked for Hillary Clinton, you're not woke and you don't have the credibility to attack Bernie Sanders for not being good enough on this issue if you worked for Hillary Clinton. So it's just unbelievable to me that these people think that we care about what they have to say when they don't have credibility, when they showed that they don't know how to run a campaign. That's a layup. You couldn't beat Donald Trump. So why would you think we care about what you have to say? Another thing here, they claim that half of his donors, Adam Parkhomenko, specifically said half of Bernie Sanders' individual donors were named Vladimir, or only half were named Vladimir, to kind of get Bernie Sanders and imply, look, he is a Russian stooge, and the Russians are trying to prop him up in the same way that they propped up Donald Trump. And the perfect response to this came in the form of a tweet from Kyle Kulinski, who states, quote, "If only some of us predicted they would immediately flip Russiagate nonsense back on the left." That's exactly right. They're taking these troll farms, these clickbait farms that the Russian government utilizes, and pointing to, I guess, these Buff Bernie memes as evidence that Bernie Sanders is being propped up by the Russians in the same way that Donald Trump was. Well, I've got really bad news for you guys. Donald Trump didn't win because of the Russians. Donald Trump won because Hillary Clinton didn't know how to read the room in an anti-establishment election cycle. Hillary Clinton decided to not campaign in Wisconsin. Hillary Clinton decided to ignore fears that she was too far to the right and chose a running mate that was to her right. Hillary Clinton did not lose because of Russia. She lost because she sucks. Simple as that. But what they're trying to do is exploit this Cold War paranoia that has reemerged since 2016 in order to use this McCarthyist smear against Bernie Sanders. But it's a lie, and he wasn't being serious, admittedly. He was being facetious. But at the same time, what if? If he could basically put it out there as if it's an open question, like Bernie Sanders is being propped up by the Russians, then he's doing his job. More on this here. Quote, "Still, Sanders doesn't pretend he and Clinton are pals. When he was asked last week on The View whether he would seek advice from Clinton as other 2020 contenders have, there was no artifice in his answer. I suspect not, he said. Hillary and I have fundamental differences. His answer didn't go over well with Clinton allies who viewed it as a poke in the eye. I don't know who our nominee is going to be, but I am damn sure that beating Trump and getting America back on the right footing is going to require a unified Democratic Party. So crap like this 613 days before the election day is irresponsible, counterproductive, and sets us all back," tweeted Clinton spokesman Nick Merrill. Brock said the major party donors were concerned about Sanders for two reasons: electability and a difference in ideology. As a self-described democratic socialist, that's just a step too far for a lot of people, adding they worry that he would end up losing to Trump. They're incredibly transparent. They're trying to do whatever they can to take down Bernie Sanders, including concern trolling. Bernie, how could you possibly say you wouldn't seek advice from Queen Hillary, who lost to Donald Trump? Why wouldn't you ask her how you can beat Donald Trump in the event you become the nominee?
Makes sense.
Because she lost to Donald Trump? Another one of my favorite lines. Crap like this 613 days before election day is irresponsible. Do you not hear what you just said? 613 days until election day? That's almost 2 years. What are you talking about? I mean, they're trying to do whatever they can to paint Bernie Sanders as the bad guy. And I just love how David Brock here, he keeps giving us this perspective of the Democratic Party's donors. Oh, well, they're worried about his electability and, difference in ideology. And they worry that since he's a self-described democratic socialist, he could lose to Donald Trump. I've got bad news for you, David Brock. We don't care what the Democratic Party's donors think. And furthermore, if you're worried about electability and how that democratic socialist label will affect him, well, you're going to have to grapple with the fact that no matter who becomes the Democratic Party's nominee, they're going to be labeled a socialist. the Republican Party called Obama a socialist, and they said that Obamacare was socialism. So it doesn't matter who wins, but I think that Bernie Sanders actually has an advantage in a way by calling himself a democratic socialist, because if you just admit that you're a democratic socialist, and really he's a social democrat, but if you just admit that, then you are actually taking back that narrative from the GOP, and you're actually defining what it is rather than allowing them to define it for you. But with Kamala Harris, she'll say, look, I'm not a democratic socialist, but Republicans are going to call her a socialist anyway. So regardless, this is something you're going to have to deal with. But they're so clueless that they think that, it's better to just pretend that the socialist issue is going to go away if we elect a pragmatist. It doesn't matter who becomes the nominee. Republicans, Donald Trump, will name that individual, him or her, either a socialist and probably a communist as well, for any policy they propose. So shut up about this. It's such an idiotic point to make, and it's evidence as to why you guys lost to Donald Trump, because you know nothing about strategy and you don't know how to win. Now, the last thing that I want to read to you here is to assure you that if you're a Sanders supporter, you really shouldn't be worried about this, because this is the impact it has. Here's what Jeff Weaver says. The campaign in 2016 never did better than when we were being attacked by the likes of David Brock and allied parts of the party, he said. They were great for increasing our crowds, great for increasing our fundraising, and great for increasing our votes. So what they're doing here is they're kind of sparking this rally around the flag effect, albeit with Bernie Sanders. They're getting more protective of Bernie, and they're flocking to Bernie and donating to Bernie whenever they see these hacky attacks being lobbed against Bernie Sanders. So in a way, they don't realize that they're actually undermining their own cause, and they're helping Bernie Sanders. But again, I'm not surprised that they don't really see how what they're doing is backfiring, because these are Clinton people. They know nothing about strategy because they couldn't defeat Donald Trump. And all that they're doing here is voicing their grievances with Bernie Sanders because they are deluded enough to think that he's somehow responsible for Hillary Clinton not beating Trump, when that couldn't be further from the truth. He campaigned for Hillary Clinton and attended 39 events when, if I were Bernie, I wouldn't have attended a single one after the DNC tipped the scales against Bernie Sanders and essentially rigged it for Hillary Clinton. I don't feel angry when I read these articles. I'll say now what I said last time. I just feel pity for these people. These are sad people who are angry at the fact that they will never work in the White House and that Hillary Clinton will never be the president of the United States.
Subscribe if you like this video, folks. Mike's tremendous, and he's doing a really, really good job. Many people are telling me about how wonderful the Humanist Report is. Bigly.